With the NHL draft coming up here towards the end of this month on June 21st and 22nd from Vancouver, British Columbia, I thought it'd be interesting to look at the National Hockey League's final rankings off of NHL.com. And I know that there's a lot of different sources for rankings on these prospects, and they're very credible sources. Some of them, like, for example, TSN, hockeyprospect.com, for example, who has a lot of backing by some of the who's who in the game of hockey. So obviously people out there know their stuff. I'm sure Sportsnet has their own, draft list and whatnot. But I'm going off of, and everyone's going to have the same type of players in their top, like, 30 to 60, right? I mean, yes, of course, where certain players are is going to vary on everybody's list. But at the end of the day, if you take a look at, like, the top 60 of whoever's draft list it is, whether it's some independent scouting service, maybe one that's a lot more known, and then places like TSN, for example, and even the, I call it the official list on NHL.com from the, Central Scouting. Those names are going to be in different orders depending on who you hear the information from, but the majority of the names are going to be the same in the top 60, for example, only in different order, right? But what I did is I sorted it by league, and I wanted to look at the number of players that are ranked from various leagues. And I'm going to make a point on a certain league here at the end. So anyway, by the way, I'm looking at North American skaters. So players, and yeah, there are Europeans that are, on this list that are playing in North America. I didn't look at the leagues and how many players are ranked from the various European leagues, as well as European goalies. I'm strictly going off of the North American leagues, okay? So, for example, I'll just kind of list them here. This is not goaltenders. This is just the position players. Centers, wingers, defensemen. So, the Alberta Junior Hockey League, AJHL, 3 players. British Columbia Hockey League, BCHL, 9 players. The NCAA, so U.S. Division I College, 5 players. That's a different story. A lot of people that are playing NCAA are already, a lot of them are already drafted, or they didn't get drafted, and they're still playing hockey at a very high level and in a league that's still going to be heavily, heavily scouted. That's one of the reasons why I don't think there's any other league that has more free agent signings by NHL teams when you're beyond your draft year. I mean, yeah, there's always a couple of, a number of overagers in maybe the Canadian Hockey League that will get picked up and signed, but it's not even close to how many come out of the NCAA. A lot of NHL scouts have guys full-time. I think pretty much every team now has guys that are full-time dedicated to just following U.S. college to see some of these players that maybe didn't get drafted, but it's like, dude, this kid over the past 2 or 3 years has grown into a player that can probably play in the National Hockey League within 1 year. Sorry for that tangent. AJHL 3, BCHL 9, NCAA 5. So there are players playing in the NCAA that are 17, 18. Maybe they're 19 and they got missed over. The SJHL, Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, 1. He's actually on the Humboldt Broncos, by the way, so that's a pretty good story. OJHL, Ontario Junior Hockey League, Canadian Junior A, just like the SJHL. So OJHL, 5. Okay. CCHL, Central Canadian Hockey League, 2. SIJHL, the Superior International Junior Hockey League, Canadian Junior A, 1. Tier 1 Elite Hockey League, 1. What that is a midget AAA league here in the United States. Okay, teams are all over the country in this league. It's a good league, and this kid plays for the Boston Advantage U18 team. So midget major U18 AAA here in the States. 1. NCDC, National Collegiate Development Conference. I'm not a huge fan of this league, and I can maybe talk about it another time. 1 player from the NCDC. MJHL, Manitoba Junior Hockey League, 2. NAHL, North American Hockey League, 1. That's surprising to me. Usually there's a handful of players from the NAHL that are draft eligible. Well, not that are actually ranked. Sorry. That's a good league. That's the Tier 2 league here in the United States. It's below the USHL, and it's a very, very good league. That league has actually taken credit for, and rightfully so. I think they have the most direct placements of NCAA commits straight from their league. A lot of the USHL kids come in drafted, or I'm sorry, not drafted, college committed already. Um, and But the North American Hockey League is a very, very good Tier 2 junior league here in the United States. A lot of really, really good late bloomers come out of the NAHL. That point that I just made on the NCAA, with it being a league that produces some of the best free agents and some of the best players that were never really drafted, a lot of them come through the North American Hockey League. So that's a really good league. Don't sleep on the NAHL. Now, for the big boys. Well, first of all, let me also say this. There's 13 players ranked that play New England prep hockey, which it's going to show up as just high school dash whatever state the school is in. So like high dash Connecticut for Avon Old Farms, for example, which is a very, very good program. They have a long list of National Hockey League alumni. For example, Cam Atkinson is one of them. So 13 from that league, 12 from Minnesota High School. There's always kind of that rivalry. I mean, I kind of think of it as a rivalry, I guess, between New England Prep and Minnesota High School. I, to this day, would love to see their own version of like a Memorial Cup, right, where both of their seasons end kind of around the same time, and the league champion from the Minnesota State High School Championship, preferably like one of the top two teams that are in that state tournament, against the winner of, or maybe the top two teams from New England Prep, and they play like a 4-game round robin or whatever. I think that'd be really cool. Okay, now for the big hitters. The Ontario Hockey League, 50 players ranked. The Western Hockey League, 44. Good year for the WHL, especially in the high-end department, right? So I'm talking like in the top 15 to 20. There's a lot of WHLers in that. And not just defensemen, by the way. QMJHL, Quebec League, 37. Okay. USHL, 38. Interesting to note there, because the USHL has been kind of compared to the Quebec League as far as their CHL counterpart. I'm fascinated with that topic. I love the USHL versus CHL debate. The National Team Development Program, 18. Now, here's the thing. This is the point I wanted to make here. And I know I get long-winded in these things, but this is interesting. By the way, goalies. 10 from the WHL, good year for them. 3 from the USHL. 3 from the QMJHL. Again, there's kind of that mirror effect, right? OHL, 7. NTDP, 2. Both goalies that are on the National Under-18 team. North American Hockey League, 4. Remember, that's the Tier 2 league here in the States, where there's only one actual position player that's ranked, but there's 4 goaltenders. They produce some good players at different positions. New England Prep, 3 goalies. Central Canadian Hockey League, 1. Alberta Junior Hockey League, 1. And then there's the goalie for Selects Academy, U18 at South Kent School, which is basically a midget AAA team here in the States. Very, very good program. Their U16 and 15 only team has a lot of players that are going into leagues like the USHL, QMJHL probably. A lot of very good Division I commits. That's a really good program. Kind of how I referenced Avon Old Farms before and how they are to New England Prep. That's how they are. They're almost like their own independent team to an extent. I think they claim to the North American Prospects League, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, back to what I was going to talk about. You might notice how I separated the NTDP from the USHL. Those 38 players that I have on here, and again, this is all from the official NHL Central Scouting list. These aren't my rankings. 38 kids are ranked from the USHL on club teams. So I'm talking about the actual member club teams, like, for example, Youngstown Phantoms, Sioux Falls Stampede, Fargo Force. You get it, right? The NTDP, yes, they're in the USHL. They claim that as their home league, but you got to remember, there's two teams that make up the NTDP, right? There's a U17 team of 16-year-olds that this year was the '02 birth year, and then there is the under 18 team, which is the draft eligible kids that are 17 turning 18, and that was the '01 birth year. Jack Hughes, Cole Caulfield, obviously they played on the U18s, right? I'm not going to get into all that. I made what I think is a really good video on the NTDP on this channel. It's like the first video I ever did, and one of the 7 that I've made over the course of 2 years, but and it's a really informative video that I just kind of spewed off the top of my head about their history, exactly what the program is, what they do, and the difference in the two teams and who they play, who their competition is. And I even broke it down to, who does the U17 team play throughout the year, who does the U18 team play against throughout the year. And I think just watching that video alone will answer a lot of frequently asked questions that people have about the National Team Development Program that aren't familiar with it. Anyway, so if you take the USHL kids that's 38 ranked on the actual member club teams, that are not a part of the NTDP, and then the 18 kids from the program, that equals 56 as a whole that play in the USHL. The National Team Development Program, in my opinion, is almost like its own entity, okay? Especially the under 18 team, because if you look at their schedule, they only really play, well, I mean, not only, it's a fair amount of games, but they'll play like 24-ish games against USHL competition. But remember, they also play in 3 international tournaments throughout the year, the main one being the IIHF U18 Worlds in April. But they also will play like 12 to 13 games against NCAA Division I teams and some Division III teams. Okay? I should have probably looked at the exact number of USHL games that the U18s played this year, the NTDP. But that's the thing. It's like the under-17 team carries the weight primarily of their USHL schedule. All right? That's one of the reasons why, too, if the NTDP makes the USHL playoffs, it's the U17 team that represents them. I mean, partly because the under-18s are going to be at the IIHF Worlds. If that was never a tournament, then, I don't know, maybe they would send the under-18 team there. But here's the thing. The USHL, for the first time ever, took credit in 2015, I want to say, for having the most players drafted out of compared to any other junior league in the world. The commissioner at the time, Bob Fallon, used that as a marketing chip like crazy, as he should, right? Now, the USHL is a fantastic league. It's a great development league. It is heavily scouted by the National Hockey League. We're going back to even as far as 2002, when the USHL declared itself as the one and only Tier 1 junior league here in the States. It became apparent to every NHL GM, and they told their scouts that the USHL has to be on their rotation to start looking at players. And then after a while, it was no longer that afterthought to Canadian Major Junior. It was like, okay, the USHL, even as recent as probably 7 years ago, guys, was always looked at as just that redheaded stepchild to the CHL. It was always just that junior A league south of the border. Now it's like, this is its own major junior league in its own right. However, out of the club teams, I'm not talking about the National Team Development Program. I'm talking about the regular USHL teams that are in this league, okay? So like the Dubuque Fighting States, for example. There isn't as many high-end players that are ranked, okay? I think the highest ranked player on a USHL club team this year is like ranked mid to late first round. Of course, there's a lot of kids from the NTDP that are ranked in the top 10. I mean, shit, there's literally, I think, 3 in the top 5 and probably 5 or 6 in the top, like, 12 or 11. And that's going to be on the majority of people's draft list that you look at. And here's the thing. You're going to read online the next day after the draft, if these guys all in fact get picked. Let's just say in a perfect world, all of these players that I have listed, somehow get picked out of the main leagues, like the big ones. You're going to read an article that says, the USHL leads the way again with the most players drafted in the National Hockey League draft. Because, I mean, yeah, technically, the USHL as a whole, from their club teams plus the 18 players that are ranked on the national team development programs under 18 team, which again, like I said, that's kind of like its own separate team within the USHL, right? That's going to equal 56 USHL kids, 50 OHL, 44 WHL, 37 QMJHL, okay? What I think is still really good is how there's 38 players that are on these other USHL teams that are ranked, and the majority of them will get drafted. And that's right there with the QMJHL. Obviously, it's not far behind the WHL. I mean, WHL has 44, USHL has 38, so like 6 more players. The OHL still does lead the way, but it's just funny because that's what they're going to have as their headline. And when you see that and when you hear people talking about it, be leery of it. Say, okay, true, but how many of those kids that got drafted and that are ranked are on the U.S. National Under-18 team? So think about that next time you hear that or read it. It's like, yes, I mean, and look, I'm a USHL fan. I love the USHL. I'm one of the people that, when I am in conversations with people about it, I try to hype it up. But remember, be leery when you see the headlines, and then they'll even say things like, X amount of players with USHL ties get drafted, which is going to make the number go even higher. Case in point is Andrei Svechnikov for the Carolina Hurricanes. Yeah, he played for the Muskegon Lumberjacks as a 16-year-old, but then he went to the OHL and played for the Barrie Colts because he was the number 1 pick in the CHL import draft that June. So remember that too, guys. It's like, sure, he can. The USHL is going to say, "Oh, we had ties in developing." Of course, Austin Matthews played in the USHL for 2 straight years, but yeah, sure, Svechnikov played for the Muskegon Lumberjacks, but he was drafted out of the Barrie Colts organization, so he's going to be able to claim OHL for that. Why wouldn't he? He played there for a whole year before he was drafted, right? So keep that in mind when you're looking at this. It's just always, I just had to make the point about it because I don't think a lot of people look at it from that standpoint. They'll say, oh, yeah, so-and-so, USHL led the way again with 56 players that are ranked, but it's like, take a step back and say, okay, how many are on the U18 team? Because that team, yeah, sure, it claims the USHL as its home base, but its whole schedule is not against USHL teams. And I'll guarantee you, if the NTDP were to disperse halfway through the year and just shut down the program and they just have to go play somewhere else, how many would all of them say, "Oh yeah, we'll all go play for USHL club teams, member teams"? A lot would, because they want to play college hockey, and the USHL is the best development path for the NCAA and pro hockey, guys. I'm not diminishing the USHL; it's a great league, and it is a viable route to the NHL, but would Jack Hughes be playing in the USHL? No. Supposedly, he actually tried to get exceptional status. I don't know how hard he tried, but they inquired about it when he was drafted, before his OHL draft year. Of course, his CHL rights are held by the Mississauga Steelheads, but they wouldn't let him play as a 15-year-old. So he played another year of minor midget and went to the national team development program. But if they were to let him play and get that exceptional status, then he wouldn't be claiming allegiance to the USHL in this draft. I mean, just some food for thought. So wanted to kind of make that point.